me ask you something. How many times have you swallowed your words, ignored your instincts, and said yes when every part of you wanted to say no? How many times have you played the nice guy, hoping it would earn you respect, love, or success, only to be left overlooked, used, or forgotten? Because here's the reality no one wants to say out loud. Being the nice guy doesn't get you ahead. It gets you ignored. And the moment you stop playing that role, everything starts to change. Being the nice guy is often mistaken for being good, kind, or noble. But the truth underneath it is rarely about genuine kindness. It's usually fear wearing a polite mask. The nice guy persona is rooted in a deep-seated fear of rejection, of conflict, of being seen as anything less than likable. So instead of acting with authenticity and strength, the nice guy adapts. He molds himself into what he thinks other people want. He doesn't speak his truth, he speaks what's safe. He doesn't set boundaries, he avoids them to keep the peace. It's not driven by principle, he's driven by approval. It's not about doing what's right, it's about doing what won't upset anyone. The nice guy is agreeable to a fault. He says yes to things he doesn't want to do, he apologizes when he's not wrong, he stays quiet when something doesn't sit right with him, he lets others speak over him, take advantage of his time, his energy, his attention, all because deep down, he's terrified of being disliked. He believes that if he's just nice enough, polite enough, accommodating enough, he'll finally be accepted, appreciated, loved. But it doesn't work like that. It never has. What actually happens is people learn they can walk over him, that they can take, demand, disrespect, and he'll smile through it all. And the more he does it, the more they expect it. It becomes the standard. People-pleasing is not a virtue, it's a survival mechanism. Somewhere along the way, the nice guy learned that playing small and staying agreeable kept him safe. Maybe it came from childhood, trying to avoid punishment, rejection, or emotional chaos. Maybe it came from relationships, where he was taught that conflict equals abandonment. So he made himself smaller, less threatening, more likable. He became a chameleon, always adjusting to the room, always reading the mood, always bending himself just enough to avoid tension, but in doing so, he betrayed himself repeatedly. What makes it worse is the illusion of moral superiority that often comes with it. Nice guys tell themselves they're doing the right thing. They're being good people. They confuse weakness with virtue. They think they're the better man because they don't push back, don't assert themselves, don't cause problems. But avoiding conflict isn't strength. Silence in the face of disrespect isn't grace. And saying yes when you mean no isn't kindness. It's self-betrayal. This fear-based niceness bleeds into every area of life. At work, the nice guy won't speak up in meetings, won't ask for the raise, won't take credit for his ideas, because he doesn't want to seem arrogant or demanding. In relationships, he becomes overly accommodating, suppresses his needs, and ends up resenting the very people he tried to please. In friendships, he gets drained because he's constantly giving without receiving. He becomes everyone's emotional support system, but no one shows up for him. Not really. Not when it counts. Being the nice guy isn't about being good. It's about being afraid. And that fear eats away at your potential, your self-worth, and your identity until one day you don't even recognize the person in the mirror. You see someone who's always there for everyone except himself. When you're always nice, always agreeable, and always available, people start to see you differently, not as generous or kind, but as someone they can rely on for one-sided benefit. Being too nice becomes a trap, because what starts as a desire to be liked or helpful slowly turns into a pattern of being taken for granted. People stop appreciating your efforts. They stop saying thank you. They stop noticing the energy you give. Why? Because it becomes expected, it becomes routine, and in their minds it loses value. Human nature doesn't always reward consistency with gratitude. It often rewards it with complacency. The more you give without asking for anything in return, the more people assume that's just who you are and that you'll always do it. You pick up the phone at 2 a.m., that's just you. You say yes to every request, every favor, every change of plan, that's just how you operate. You never speak up when you're uncomfortable or inconvenienced? Well, then people won't think twice before walking all over you. They'll assume it doesn't bother you because you never say it does. This is where resentment begins to grow. You start to feel it deep down when your efforts go unnoticed. You notice how others don't do for you what you do for them. You see how quickly they disappear when you need something, or how they keep taking without ever offering to give, but you don't say anything because nice guys don't start problems. Instead, you keep showing up. You keep giving. You keep pretending everything's fine, and they keep assuming that it is. It's not that people are always malicious. Most of the time, they're just operating by the cues you give them. If you show them that your time has no boundaries, they'll treat it like it's endless. If you act like you're fine being the one who always compromises, they'll let you. If you never enforce your worth, people will never recognize it. Being taken for granted isn't always about other people being cruel. It's often about you failing to set the tone for how you should be treated. What makes this worse is that the nice guy often feels like he's doing the right thing. He believes that selflessness is always noble, that putting others first makes him a good man. But what he doesn't realize is that people respect boundaries more than blind generosity. They respect clarity more than passivity. And when you're always the one adjusting, accommodating, or softening yourself to avoid conflict or discomfort, people don't admire you. They tolerate you. They use your flexibility as a tool, not as a virtue. And when you finally reach your breaking point and pull back, they're shocked, not because you've changed, but because they never actually saw you as a person with needs in the first place. This is how being too nice backfires. What begins as an attempt to be accepted turns into a lifestyle where your kindness is overlooked, your presence is undervalued, and your time is disrespected. Because the truth is, when you give too much without standing your ground, people forget the cost of what you're giving. Being the nice guy doesn't get you the respect, loyalty, or admiration you're hoping for. In fact, more often than not, it gets you the opposite. It gets you overlooked, sidelined, and worst of all, used. You think by being kind, agreeable, and self-sacrificing, you'll win people over. You think that if you show them how good you are, how reliable and understanding and accommodating you can be, they'll value you. But what actually happens is people start seeing you as easy. Easy to manipulate, easy to guilt, easy to push around. You're not being chosen, you're being selected for convenience. Loyalty isn't born from how much you give, it's born from how much you demand. When you're too nice, people feel like they don't have to earn your time or effort. They don't feel like they have to meet your standards. Because you don't show any, you just go with the flow, never pushing back, never challenging anyone, never making them work to keep you in their life. That doesn't inspire loyalty, that inspires laziness. They give you the bare minimum and they know you'll still be there, smiling and supportive every time they come back around. The truth is, most people don't value what's handed to them without effort. When you're constantly giving and never asking, constantly showing up but never setting limits, people start to assume your presence is automatic. They stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as a resource, someone they can drain. Someone they can lean on when it's convenient, ignore when it's not, and discard when they're done. You become the backup plan, the safety net, the emotional support who never asks for anything in return. In relationships, this becomes painfully clear. You're always available, always understanding, always forgiving, even when you're being disrespected. You think you're proving your worth, showing how stable and loving you are, but in reality, you're training people to treat you like a doormat. You teach them that they can disappear, mistreat you, come and go as they please, and you'll still be there, waiting, hoping they'll finally appreciate you. But they don't. They won't. Because you've shown them that no matter what they do, you'll stay. There's no incentive for them to be better because you've made it clear you'll accept worse. Real loyalty comes when people know you won't tolerate being used. It comes when they understand that your time, your energy, your presence, those are earned. They're not guaranteed. When you stop being overly nice and start setting clear boundaries, some people will fall off. That's not a loss, that's clarity. That's the filter working. The ones who stay, those are the ones who respect you. Not because you gave them everything, but because you made them show up with effort, honesty, and respect. Being too nice doesn't get you love, it gets you overlooked. Being too available doesn't get you loyalty, it gets you taken for granted. People don't commit to the ones who chase their approval, they commit to the ones who command respect. And respect begins the moment you stop begging for it through self-sacrifice. When you stop being the nice guy, you start to see things for what they really are. You stop pretending. You stop covering up your discomfort with fake smiles and forced patience. And when that mask drops, people's true intentions begin to show. It's a brutal but necessary moment of clarity. All the dynamics that once seemed balanced are suddenly exposed for what they are. One-sided, manipulative, or built entirely on your willingness to fold. You begin to notice who actually respects you and who is just enjoying the version of you that never pushed back. People who once called you such a good guy start acting cold or distant when you set a boundary. They liked the version of you who always said yes, the version who apologized even when he wasn't wrong, the version who went out of his way to avoid tension, even if it meant sacrificing himself. But now that you're speaking your mind, saying no, drawing lines, they're uncomfortable. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're no longer easy to control. It becomes clear who was in your life because of what you gave and who was there because of who you truly are. That clarity doesn't always feel good. In fact, it often feels like loss at first. Friends fade, relationships shift, people accuse you of changing, but what they're really reacting to is the fact that their access to you is no longer free. You've stopped being emotionally available on demand. You've stopped catering to other people's needs while neglecting your own. And when that happens, the ones who are only there for the benefits start to disappear. You also gain a sharper understanding of your own patterns. You begin to see how much of your life was shaped by the fear of disappointing others. How many times you kept quiet, backed down, or made yourself small just to keep others comfortable. It's not just that people took you for granted, you allowed it, thinking that self-sacrifice would lead to love or acceptance. But now you see it clearly. Being the nice guy wasn't just about kindness, it was about survival. It was about staying safe. And once you let that go, you realize how much of your identity wasn't really you, it was just a defense mechanism. With that awareness comes power. Real, grounded power. The kind that doesn't need to yell to be heard or fight to be respected. You stop chasing validation. You stop worrying about whether people will like you. Instead, you focus on whether they're showing up with honesty, effort, and integrity. You're no longer trying to impress or please. You're observing, you're evaluating, and most importantly, you're choosing. Not everyone will survive that transition. Some will label you arrogant, selfish, or cold. But what they're really saying is this: you're not who I could control anymore. And that's the most honest feedback you'll ever receive. Clarity isn't always comfortable, but it's essential. Because once you see people for who they are without the influence of your old behavior, you can finally start building real, mutual, and respectful connections. When you stop being the nice guy, something shifts, not just inside you, but in the way people respond to you. You no longer blend into the background. You no longer get overlooked in conversations and decisions or in relationships. Instead, you begin to stand out. Not because you're louder, not because you're trying to impress, but because you're finally moving through the world with a clear sense of who you are. You're no longer bending to avoid discomfort. You're no longer softening your words to avoid upsetting someone. You speak with confidence, you act with purpose, and people feel that. When you have boundaries, people notice. When you say no without guilt, when you stand your ground without getting emotional, it commands a different kind of attention. You're no longer trying to be liked by everyone, which ironically makes people respect you more because they can sense it. You don't need them. You're not chasing approval. You're not trying to win anyone over. And that's rare. That's powerful. People respect those who respect themselves. They respect someone who values his time, energy, and presence enough to protect it. This respect doesn't come from trying to dominate or control others. It comes from being in control of yourself, from knowing where you stand and refusing to apologize for it. The nice guy waters himself down so he doesn't offend anyone. He's always watching what he says, second-guessing his instincts, adjusting his behavior to keep the peace. But in doing so, he loses presence. He loses edge. People forget he's even there, because he never brings anything real to the table. He's too careful, too filtered, too afraid of being disliked to be fully seen. But when you let go of that fear, you begin to move differently. You stop walking into rooms hoping to fit in and start walking in like you belong, because you do. Not because you've earned it through people-pleasing, but because you understand your own worth. That understanding is quiet, but undeniable. It's in your posture, your tone, your decisions. It's in the way you speak directly without needing to soften the truth. It's in the way you look people in the eye without shrinking. The way you walk away from things that don't serve you without explanation or apology. Respect doesn't come from always saying the right thing or being the most agreeable. It comes from being real, from being consistent, from having principles and sticking to them, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. When people see that you don't fold under pressure, when they see that you can say no and mean it, when they realize you're not someone they can guilt or manipulate, they treat you differently. Even the ones who don't like you will think twice before crossing you, because strength, when grounded in discipline and clarity, makes people pause. It makes them pay attention. You don't have to be mean, you don't have to be aggressive, but you do have to be solid. And that solidity is what turns attention into respect. Not by force, not by fear, but by presence. The presence of someone who no longer needs to be liked because he already likes who he's become. When you stop being the nice guy, your entire trajectory shifts. You begin to win, not just in superficial ways, but in the deep foundational areas of your life. The kind of winning that comes from alignment, from clarity, from finally stepping into who you were supposed to be before you watered yourself down for the world. The nice guy loses because he's constantly negotiating with his own potential. He knows what he wants, but he hesitates, he overthinks. He holds back to make sure no one else feels uncomfortable. He waits for permission to speak, to lead, to go after what matters. And in that hesitation, the opportunity is gone. But once you let go of that need to be liked, things start to move. You stop sitting on your talent, your ambition, your voice. You stop questioning whether you deserve to take up space. You begin to act, not from insecurity, but from certainty. You don't wait for the green light anymore. You are the green light. The moment you decide that you don't need validation, you start operating on a different frequency. You become more focused, more decisive, more committed to the mission instead of the opinions of the people watching you. Success responds to clarity. It doesn't respond to passivity. And the nice guy is passive by nature. He hopes things will come to him if he just proves he's good enough. He believes if he's nice, if he's agreeable, if he never stirs the pot, eventually someone will reward him for it. But life doesn't work that way. No one hands out rewards for being harmless. You don't earn anything by being neutral. What actually moves the needle is courage. The courage to say no, to take risks, to walk away from anything that doesn't align with your values or your goals. When you stop being the nice guy, you start protecting your time and energy. You stop engaging in things that drain you. You stop entertaining people who only want you around when it benefits them. This creates space. Space for better relationships. Space for meaningful work. Space for higher standards. You begin to attract differently because you show up differently. The people who used to manipulate you disappear, and the ones who respect strength and honesty begin to show up. You go from being overlooked to being remembered. You go from being tolerated to being valued. And it's not just about how others see you. It's about how you see yourself. When you stop trying to earn love through sacrifice, you start building self-respect through action. You trust your own voice more. You rely on your own decisions. You hold yourself to higher standards because now you're doing it for you. Not to prove something, not to gain approval, but because you finally believe you deserve more. That belief is what starts to fuel everything. You pursue goals harder. You cut off distractions quicker. You develop discipline, not out of fear of failure, but out of a refusal to stay small. This is when things really start to shift. You're no longer reacting to life. You're creating it.